Welcome, truth seekers and freedom lovers. This is Makia with the Freedom Articles. This is video number 336 on Monday, July 13th, 2026. And in this video, we bid farewell to a giant of a thinker, journalist, researcher, author, and so much more. None other than Jon Rappoport, who has passed away. I remember going to his website many times over the years. He had a few of them. He was the one that did nomorefakenews.com, and this was a very old site, well before Trump came on the scene in 2016, 2015, when he was running for president for the first time and started using that phrase fake news and claiming that he invented that. He didn't invent it, but Trump lying is nothing new. Now, many people had been using the phrase fake news a long time before Trump, including Jon Rappoport. But basically, he had moved over to Substack a few years ago. And so he has a whole archive and many articles there if you want to check it out. Recently, there is a man called Tom Cudler who is going to be the steward of his work and basically, overseeing how to continue publishing it, because there's a lot of stuff that Jon has written that hasn't been published yet. But Rappoport did pass away peacefully on the evening of Wednesday, July 8th, 2026, about 5 days ago. And he had pre-recorded this message of about 5 minutes. There wasn't any great conspiracy around it. He was getting old, and he decided to spend his last days at home, not going to an emergency room.
This is Jon Rappoport, and this is June 15th, 2026. My senior producer, close friend, business associate, Tom Cudler, has strict instructions to play this audio in the event that I pass away. So if you're hearing it, that means I'm gone. This lifetime is over for me.
So you can listen to that if you want. He doesn't really want to talk about his personal life that much. He just kind of says a little bit about what he was going through. So his work is still up here, and there's going to be more that are coming. Tom Cudler here writes a little bit about what you can expect in the future if you want to read more of Jon's work, that there's going to be a Jon Rappoport stewardship charter that'll set out standards. So that will be interesting to see, to get more of his work. But I mean, he can be remembered for a lot of things. He did write a book in 1988 called AIDS Inc., and this is a good summary of it. So basically, one of the greatest things about Rappoport for me was that he really understood the virus myth. And he came across that, I guess, for the first time in the 80s when the whole AIDS thing was really big. Because right then they were pushing the theory that HIV caused AIDS and that you needed to treat AIDS with a toxic drug, AZT. And it turns out that actually the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, didn't really cause AIDS. There wasn't really a connection between it and having symptoms of AIDS. And on top of that, the people that were so-called sick from AIDS were actually getting sick because of this carcinogenic and highly toxic drug. And he also came across the work of Peter Duesberg, who another guy who really went against the prevailing medical establishment and started questioning viruses and questioning what might really be causing disease, like antibiotics or cytomegalovirus, syphilis bacterium, all sorts of stuff. So Rappoport was fearless. He was prepared to go where it was inconvenient or uncomfortable, and he came up with a lot of great information. And so he fully understood this whole thing through writing this book way back in the 80s. And so, he began to talk about this in the 90s a lot. He talked with he was on lots of radio shows, even before Alex Jones was big. But then I remember when I was writing some of my articles, for example, Ebola, we had the whole Ebola hoax. It seemed like there was one every 2 years. The Ebola was in 2014, Zika, that was in 2016. It was all the same playbook, the fake pandemic playbook, where they would whip up some big virus scare. They would exaggerate the deaths. And there was no proof that the virus was causing the deaths anyway. And then they would want to bring in all these emergency measures. And of course, the WHO, which played such a big role in the whole COVID scamdemic, and which is it's found, if you look into the history of it, of course, it's founded by the Rockefellers on Rockefeller land in New York. It's been part of Ebola in 2014, Zika in 2016, and all of them. This whole fake pandemic thing is a very key part of the whole new world order that you need to understand. But they when they want to roll out more control agendas and get more surveillance in and more restrictions on freedom of travel, freedom of movement, freedom of like medical autonomy, then they roll out the fake pandemic, and it's very effective. In some ways, it's even more effective than war, which they also love doing. But you have to understand that this is a playbook that they've been refining for literally decades. In fact, you could even say centuries when you go back to like the history of certain vaccines and how that started in like 1910, 1920. But anyway, for now, decades. And I would look at Jon's work. Jon would always be out on front, calling nonsense, calling these things out as right when they were starting to get launched by the mainstream media. And it took other people days, weeks, months to finally catch on and realize what was happening. But Rappoport understood it. And absolutely, he understood this with the coronavirus COVID scamdemic. He was out there on the front lines exposing this. And I would often be linking to him in my articles on COVID during when this whole thing was kicking off in the early part of 2020. I remember, for example, this article I wrote in April 2020, COVID-19 umbrella term to operate a fake pandemic, not one disease, not one cause. This was what Jon Rappoport was saying. He was saying that you can use the word COVID all you want, but it doesn't mean that there's one thing called COVID or that there's one cause. They're grouping together all these different people who are sick, and they're saying, oh, they have COVID, which is a made-up term, and they could be sick for all these different reasons, and it could have nothing to do with the virus or the specific SARS-CoV-2 virus. And people just couldn't seem to grasp that. People were just so expecting that there was some new disease and that it had to have one cause. And, the brainwashing goes so deep. So part of, it was great to see many people waking up during COVID. By the end, part of the waking up has to be questioning the cause and effect, questioning viruses, questioning what causes disease in the first place, questioning the way that the death certificates and the body count and all of this were being done in the fake pandemic. Because we have to understand this, because they're going to roll this out again. They haven't spent all this time since COVID died down trying to get a WHO pandemic treaty, trying to get different accords and different laws on the books where all the nations are forced to follow the WHO when someone declares an emergency. That they haven't spent all this time doing this for nothing. They want to launch this whole thing again. I don't know when, but I just know that if people aren't aware of the basics of how the scam works, then we're going to fall for it again. So it is absolutely worth your time. And if you know people, friends, family, colleagues who still don't understand the whole way a fake pandemic operates, it is well worth researching that and educating yourself. And there is really no one better than Jon Rappoport to do it with. So I'm going to link to his existing Substack archive in this video and bid him farewell. He was a great truth seeker. May there be many more like him. As always, don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Please leave your comments, and all links are placed in the show notes below every time. If you like this video and feel that I've earned it, please like, share, subscribe, and follow. My work is on Rumble, BitChute, Odysee, Brighteon, Substack, YouTube, and thefreedomarticles.com.